The Threx Dominion had ruled the stars for centuries. Their fleets stretched across hundreds of worlds. Their armies were vast and their empire seemed unshakable. When they discovered Earth, they thought it would be just another easy victory. To them, humans looked weak. They had no great fleets, no powerful weapons compared to the Threx. So the invasion came fast. Cities burned in silence, skies filled with alien ships, and millions of humans were taken away from their homes. The Threx placed them in giant orbital cages, massive stations that hung like dark shadows above conquered worlds. In the eyes of the Threx, the war was over. Humanity had been broken. But the Threx made a mistake. They thought cages would tame humans. They thought fear would silence them. Instead, the prisons became the first spark of resistance. Inside the cages, humans watched, waited, and learned. There were scientists who memorized every piece of alien technology they saw. There were soldiers who studied guard patrols, counting footsteps and noting blind spots. There were builders and mechanics who looked at scraps of metal and thought of ways to use them. Even the children, quiet and wide-eyed, listened carefully to the world around them. The Threx could not understand this. To them, survival was only about strength. But humans had always been more than that. They were a species born from struggle. Storms, hunger, cold, and fire had shaped them. Every challenge of their homeworld had forced them to adapt. And now, caged among the stars, they began adapting again. At first, it was small. A few words exchanged through the bars when guards were not listening. A simple nod across the room that meant wait or be ready, pieces of wire hidden in clothes, tiny tools made from scraps left behind. It was not much, but it was a beginning. The Threx laughed at the humans. To them, the prisoners were broken creatures. They saw humans sitting quietly, eating their food, following orders. They did not see the silent network forming, one whisper at a time. They did not notice the sparks of defiance hidden in every glance. Among the prisoners was an old teacher named Marcus Hale. He had no weapons, no army, but he carried something far more dangerous: memory. Each night he told stories to those who would listen, stories of Earth's long battles, of wars survived, of impossible odds overcome. His words reminded the others who they were and what they were capable of. "Chains are not forever," Marcus said one night, his voice low but steady.
"Cages cannot hold those who refuse to bow."
Remember, humans endure. Across the cages, people listened, and they believed. Soon others stepped forward. A young engineer named Aisha discovered that the locks on the food crates used a simple electronic signal. With scraps of broken wiring, she built a crude device to mimic it. A soldier named Ramirez mapped out every guard's movement, memorizing how long it took before patrols returned. A quiet girl of 15, Lena, learned how to slip between shadows, unnoticed by even the sharpest Threx eyes. Piece by piece, the humans were building something greater than any cage. They were building hope. The first act of defiance came on the 92nd day of captivity. The Threx had left behind a broken maintenance drone, thinking it useless. But to Aisha, it was a gift. With help from others, she repaired it, not to serve the Threx, but to serve them. She rewired its systems, giving it new commands. At night, when guards were thin, the drone moved silently, carrying stolen food to the weakest prisoners. When the Threx found the drone missing, they dismissed it as a machine failure. They did not know it had become the humans' first ally. Day by day, more cages changed. Humans shared knowledge, traded secrets, and prepared. They were still trapped, but they no longer felt defeated. They had discovered the one thing the Threx never expected: unity. One evening, Marcus stood at the bars looking out at the stars. His eyes were old, but his spirit was young. He whispered to the others nearby, "The Threx believe we are beaten, but they do not understand us. A human in a cage is not a prisoner. A human in a cage is a storm waiting to rise." The others nodded, their faces lit by a quiet fire. The Threx Dominion thought they had won. They thought the humans would break and bend like every other species they had conquered. But in the darkness of those cages, something stronger was growing. Not fear, not despair, resistance. And the first cracks in the chains had begun to appear. The Threx Dominion had taken many worlds before, but none had ever caused them real trouble. Their empire was built on fear, and fear always worked, until they tried it on humans. In the cages above conquered Earth, the humans were no longer waiting. They were planning. The change began quietly, almost invisible. A nod here, a whisper there. A soldier shared what he knew about patrol times. An engineer explained how to rewire a circuit. A teacher repeated words of courage until even the weakest prisoner began to believe. The Threks saw people eating, sleeping, and obeying orders. What they did not see was a growing storm of resistance. The cages had been designed to crush spirit. Rows of cells, steel floors, and endless lights that never turned off. But humans had lived through worse in their own history, and instead of breaking, they remembered. Every day, small acts of defiance grew bolder. Aisha, the young engineer, used her crude signal device to open food crates without permission. She then hid extra rations in secret compartments under the floor plates. Ramirez, the soldier, trained a group of prisoners in silence. How to move without sound, how to signal with hand motions, how to fight without weapons. Even children joined in, learning how to distract guards with questions or sudden noise at just the right moment. The Threks never noticed. To them, the humans were too simple to be dangerous. But the first true strike came one night when a patrol entered the cage sector and found nothing unusual, until the lights went out. The entire block went dark, plunging guards and prisoners alike into shadow. The aliens panicked, their eyes adjusting slowly, their claws tightening on weapons. But the humans were already gone, hidden in corners and shadows where the guards never expected. By the time the lights returned, one guard was missing his weapon. Another had his communication device stolen. The Threks thought it was an accident, perhaps a system failure. They laughed at the idea that humans could have planned it. But Marcus, the old teacher, knew the truth. He gathered the prisoners in whispers and said, "This is the beginning. Small victories become larger ones. The Threks cannot fight what they cannot see." And so the silent uprising grew. The humans began creating maps of the cages, memorizing which doors connected to which halls. They learned the sound of every alarm, the timing of every patrol. They tapped codes on the metal bars, messages that looked like random noise to the guards but carried meaning to those who listened. The most daring act came from Lena, the quiet girl who moved like a shadow. She slipped out of her cell during a shift change, her small frame unnoticed. She followed two guards down a hall and discovered something no human had yet seen, the control room for the sector. Screens glowed with images of every cage, every prisoner. Buttons lined the walls, controlling doors and lights. She memorized it all and returned without a sound. When she told the others, Aisha's eyes lit with hope. "If we can reach that room, we control the cages. We can lock the guards in. We can free ourselves," but Marcus raised a warning hand. "Not yet. We must be patient. The Threks are blind now, but if we strike too early, they will see us. The storm must be ready before it breaks." So they waited, even as their courage grew. More tools were stolen, more devices built. The drone Aisha had repaired now carried more than food. It carried wires, scraps, and tiny pieces of technology between cages. Soon, entire blocks of prisoners were connected in secret. The Threks still laughed. They saw humans kneeling when ordered, lining up for meals, returning to their cells. They thought the cages had worked, but something had changed in the eyes of the prisoners. Where once there had been despair, now there was fire. The next blackout came a week later. This time the humans did not simply hide. Hay moved. Guards found themselves trapped in locked halls, their communication devices filled with static. Security doors opened without warning, releasing prisoners who were supposed to be locked away. And in the confusion, weapons vanished from guard belts as fast as they could be drawn. By dawn, the cages looked normal again. The lights were steady, the guards marched, and the humans sat quietly in their cells. But the Threks did not know that whole blocks of prisoners now had hidden supplies and stolen weapons. They did not know the uprising had already begun. That night, Marcus spoke once more. His voice was low, but every ear strained to hear him. "The Threks believe cages make us weak," he said. "But they are blind. We have turned cages into classrooms, hunger into strength, silence into weapons. They think we wait for mercy, but we wait only for the right moment. And when it comes, the Dominion will tremble." The prisoners nodded, their hands clenched in determination. The humans were still trapped, but the walls no longer felt unbreakable. Each day, the Dominion thought it was in control. Each day, the humans proved them wrong. The uprising was no longer silent. It was alive. And soon the galaxy would hear it. The Threks Dominion had built its empire on control. Their ships were powerful, their weapons advanced, and their cages unbreakable, or so they thought. But now, in the darkness of space, the cracks were spreading. The humans had already done the impossible. They had stolen food, built tools, and trapped guards in their own halls. But their boldest move was still to come. It began on prison station K-47, one of the largest human cages orbiting a dead moon. Aisha, the engineer, had been working for weeks, piecing together stolen circuits, broken devices, and scraps of alien technology. She hid them in the walls, under floor panels, even inside the drone she had repaired. Finally, she built something the Threx had never expected, a transmitter. It was not perfect. Its signal was weak, its range limited. But with enough stolen parts, it could reach one of the Threx relay towers. And from there, the whole galaxy could hear. Ramirez, the soldier, wanted to use it to call for rescue from Earth. But Marcus, the old teacher, shook his head. "Not yet," he said. "The Threx control every channel. If we try to call for help, they will block us and we will lose everything. No, we must let them send the message for us." The others frowned, confused. "How?" asked Lena, the quiet shadow who had once entered the control room. Marcus's eyes shone with the fire of an old strategist. "We will make them fear us so much they will beg for help themselves. And when they cry out, the galaxy will know what they tried to cage." The plan was daring, dangerous, almost impossible. But humans had always done the impossible. That night, the uprising struck harder than ever before. Lights died across entire sectors. Guard barracks were sealed shut with stolen access codes. Alarms screamed in confusion as doors opened and closed against command. And for the first time, armed guards were attacked by prisoners who fought with stolen weapons. The humans did not fight to escape. Not yet. They fought to send a message. By morning, Station K-47 was in chaos. Half the guards were locked away, the other half afraid to patrol. Prisoners controlled supply rooms, mess halls, and entire blocks of cells. The Threx commanders were furious. They tried to send orders, but their systems flickered with static. Then the unthinkable happened. One of their prison ships, a massive transport filled with human captives, was taken. No one knew exactly how it happened. Some said Aisha's device disabled the ship's systems. Others whispered that Ramirez led a group of prisoners who overpowered the crew. However it was done, the result was the same. Humans had stolen a warship, and with it they had access to the Dominion's communication network. Marcus's words came true. Instead of sending a rescue call, the humans hijacked the system and forced the Threx themselves to speak. The Dominion's own distress signal echoed across the stars. "This is Station K-47. Emergency. Emergency. Humans have broken control. They are spreading through our ships and stations. We cannot contain them. Send reinforcements at once. They are too dangerous." The message repeated again and again, carried by every relay tower, every channel. Across the galaxy, other species heard it. The mighty Threx Dominion, invincible conquerors, feared overlords, were crying out in panic. Not because of fleets, not because of weapons, but because of the very people they had caged. On other prison stations, hope exploded like fire. Prisoners who had lost faith now rose with renewed strength. "If K-47 can do it, so can we," they whispered. Soon blackouts and uprisings spread to more stations. Guards vanished. Weapons disappeared. Prisoners fought back. The Dominion tried to silence the message, but it was too late. The signal had already traveled far beyond their reach. And far, far away, it reached ears that mattered most. Earth's fleet. On the bridge of a human warship, commanders listened in silence. The voice of the Threx, proud and cruel, now shook with fear. They spoke of humans as if they were storms, impossible to stop. A young officer turned to her captain. "Sir, they are asking for help." "From us." The captain's eyes were cold as steel. "No, they are asking for help from anyone. But what they don't know is that help is already on the way." Back on Station K-47, Marcus stood with his fellow prisoners as the message looped through the stolen ship. His voice was calm, steady, filled with the weight of history. "Do you hear them?" he asked softly. "For the first time, they fear us. For the first time, the galaxy sees us as more than captives. They see us as what we truly are, unbroken." The prisoners looked at one another, their chains no longer heavy. They were not just survivors. They were fighters. The Threx had thought cages would silence humanity. Instead, those cages had become the forge of a rebellion. And now, with every star hearing the Dominion's cry for help, the storm was spreading. The humans were not alone anymore. The Threx Dominion had ruled the stars through fear. Yet now their own distress signal echoed across the galaxy, carried on channels they could not silence. And somewhere in the cold reaches of space, the Deathworlders heard it. On the bridge of the ISS Valiant, the crew listened as the Dominion's panicked words repeated again and again. Humans have broken control. We cannot contain them. They are too dangerous. For a long moment, silence filled the command deck. The crew exchanged glances, some shocked, some grim, some quietly proud. At last, Admiral Rowan spoke, his voice like iron. They caged our people. They thought us weak. Now they beg for help. No more waiting. Prepare the fleet. Across the stars, ships stirred awake. Warships, carriers, and destroyers left hidden stations around Earth and Mars. The fleet was vast. Not the largest in the galaxy, but forged with purpose. Every ship carried crews hardened by a lifetime on a world of storms, earthquakes, and endless struggle. They were called Deathworlders not as an insult, but as a warning. The fleet did not travel in silence. Their engines blazed like comets as they cut across the black. Other species watched in awe and fear as the humans moved. Many had doubted Earth's strength. Many had thought the Threx would tame them. But now they saw the truth. The humans were coming and nothing would stop them. On station K-47, Marcus and the other prisoners waited. They had heard nothing yet from Earth, but hope burned brighter each day. Aisha worked endlessly, trying to keep the stolen transmitter alive. Ramirez drilled groups of prisoners with their captured weapons. Even the children carried messages, their eyes fierce with determination. Lena climbed to the top of a dark observation tower, staring out at the stars. She whispered softly, "They will come. They have to come." And then one night the stars moved. At first it looked like a line of distant lights, faint and small, but the lights grew brighter, sharper until they filled the horizon. One after another, sleek ships emerged from the void. Their hulls were black and silver, their engines glowing like suns. The Deathworlders' fleet had arrived. The Threx saw them too. Commanders shouted orders, scrambling their forces. Fleets moved from nearby systems, warships powering weapons and shields. For the first time in centuries, the Dominion prepared not to invade but to defend. The humans on K-47 could not see the battle yet, but they felt it in the vibrations of the station. The walls trembled as warships approached. Guards shouted in panic, their orders tangled and confused. Marcus placed a steady hand on Lena's shoulder. "Do not fear," he said quietly. "That trembling is not the sound of defeat. It is the sound of our people's fury." In orbit, the first clash began. The Threx warships opened fire, their energy beams lashing across space. But the Deathworlders did not scatter. They advanced in tight formation, shields glowing as they absorbed the first wave. Then they answered. Human cannons roared, launching kinetic rounds at impossible speed. Missiles streaked through the void, weaving past enemy fire. Whole sections of the Dominion fleet vanished in blinding bursts of light. The Threx had expected hesitation. They had expected fear. Instead, the Deathworlders fought with precision, every strike aimed with purpose. They did not waste time on intimidation. They came to break chains. On the bridge of the Valiant, Admiral Rowan watched calmly as enemy ships fell. His orders were simple. Target their carriers. Free the stations. Leave nothing standing that holds our people. The battle grew fierce. Threx commanders threw ship after ship into the fight, but each time the humans adapted. A destroyer shielded a wounded carrier. A frigate sacrificed itself to block an enemy barrage. Every loss only sharpened their resolve. The Threx had believed humans weak because their world was violent. But that same world had taught them unity. In the harsh storms of Earth, survival came not from strength alone, but from standing together. And now, in the cold dark of space, they fought as one. On K-47, the prisoners cheered as explosions lit the sky outside the station's viewports. For the first time, they saw their rescuers' ships, black arrows cutting through the fire of battle. "They came," Lena whispered, her eyes wide with wonder. "Yes," Marcus said with quiet pride, "and the Dominion will learn what it means when Deathworlders come for their own." Inside the station, panic spread among the guards. Some tried to flee in escape pods, but Ramirez and his fighters stopped them, taking control of key corridors. Aisha's devices disabled security locks, opening doors for the prisoners. For the first time since their capture, humans walked free inside the station. Above them, the battle reached its peak. Entire Threx fleets burned. Their commanders shouted in desperation, sending frantic calls for reinforcements. But the message that echoed through space was clear. The Deathworlders had come and nothing would stop them. By dawn cycle, the skies above K-47 were filled with human warships. Their banners of Earth glowed bright, a promise to every prisoner still waiting. The cages were no longer unbreakable. The chains were no longer permanent. The storm had arrived, carried on wings of fire. The Deathworlders were here. The skies above Station K-47 glowed with fire. Wreckage drifted in silence. The broken remains of Threx warships that once seemed unstoppable. The Deathworlders' fleet moved through the ruins like hunters through the forest, their engines burning with power. For the first time in centuries, the Threx Dominion trembled. Admiral Rowan stood on the bridge of the ISS Valiant. His eyes never left the battlefield map. Red markers, enemy ships flashed and vanished one by one as the battle raged. Around him, officers worked with steady focus. No one cheered yet. They all knew the fight was not over. Status? Rowan asked. Enemy carriers destroyed. Remaining warships in retreat, reported an officer. Prison stations still under Dominion control, but their defenses are weakening. Rowan nodded slowly. His voice carried across the deck. Good. We will not stop until every cage is broken. Signal the fleet, move on the stations. The order spread like lightning. Across the stars, human warships adjusted course. They turned their weapons not just on enemy fleets, but on the prison stations where millions of captives still waited. On K-47, Marcus and the prisoners felt the shift. The vibrations grew stronger as battle fire rained closer. Guards abandoned posts, rushing to escape pods. Ramirez and his fighters struck quickly, seizing weapons, locking doors, and driving the enemy back. Aisha's transmitter hummed, linking their stolen ship to the approaching fleet. This is prison station K-47, she said into the comm, her voice steady though her hands trembled. We are still here. We are ready. The reply came almost at once, clear and strong. This is the Valiant. Hold fast. We are coming for you. For many prisoners, tears filled their eyes. For the first time, they heard their people's voice from beyond the cages. Lena pressed her forehead against the cold glass of a viewport, watching as the fleet descended. They did not forget us, she whispered. No, Marcus said beside her. His voice carried the weight of generations. Humans never leave their own behind. The Threx tried to hold the stations. Their commanders shouted orders, demanding that guards stand firm. But fear spread faster than command. The guards had seen their mighty fleets destroyed. They had heard their leaders cry for help. Now, facing armed prisoners and the Deathworlders' fleet, their courage shattered. Rowan gave the final order. Begin liberation. The human warships opened fire, but with precision. They did not destroy the stations. Instead, they targeted shield generators, weapon batteries, and power lines. The cages darkened one by one, their defenses crumbling. And then the Deathworlders boarded. Dropships roared across the void, slamming into station docks. Armored soldiers poured out, their banners of Earth shining on their suits. They moved with calm fury, cutting through the last Threx defenses. Doors burst open and prisoners rushed forward, crying out in joy as they saw their rescuers. On K-47, Ramirez led the charge to the main hangar. His fighters met the boarding troops halfway, and for a moment, silence filled the hall as the two groups of humans faced each other. Then the soldiers saluted. We came for you, one said simply. Ramirez grinned through the dirt and blood on his face. We were waiting. The two groups joined as one, sweeping through the station and freeing every last cage. Marcus stood in the central chamber as lights flickered back to life. For the first time since his capture, he felt air that was free of chains. Around him, people embraced, laughed, and wept. The Dominion's control had ended here, but beyond K-47 the war was still raging. News of the humans' uprising and the fleet's arrival spread faster than the Dominion could contain it. On world after world, prisoners rebelled. On station after station, guards fled. The mighty Threx fleets broke apart, unable to hold the storm. Within weeks, the Dominion collapsed. The galaxy watched in awe as the unthinkable happened. A species once seen as fragile had risen from cages and toppled an empire. Where others had bent under chains, humans had turned captivity into fire. Admiral Rowan stood once more on the bridge of the Valiant, watching the stars. His officers spoke quietly around him, reporting victories, rescues, and the fall of enemy strongholds. Sir, one asked, what message shall we send to the galaxy? Rowan thought for a long moment. Then he spoke with calm certainty. Tell them this, humanity will not be caged. We endure, we fight, and we free. The word spread across every channel, every world that had heard the Threk's cry for help. And in the quiet after battle, Marcus looked to the stars with pride. He remembered the first days in the cage when hope seemed lost. He remembered the whispers, the small acts of courage, the sparks that grew into fire. Now the fire had become a blaze that lit the galaxy. Humans had been chained, but never broken. And from that day on, every species knew the truth. To cage a Deathworlder was to invite fury. The reckoning was complete.